I have to play you this. This was from your Robin Revilius interview that you did, and it features only on the longer version on the Breathe Pictures podcast, but I thought I have to play this. What on earth was going...
Well, I'll get the camera.
Wonderful, yeah, thank you so much.
How about that cake now?
Yes, I will. Shall I cut it open?
Yes, do. Help yourself.
It's so quaint.
Probably not, I think.
Oh, look, you said, are you going to have a slice? And she said, probably not. How did that make you feel now? Because look, listen now. You go to war with the wrapping. Look, how much wrapping is on this cake?
I remember that cake.
I haven't edited this longer. This is you opening the cake. Promise you.
I'm sure it was raining really hard.
There's another 30 seconds of this. What were you doing? Making wrapping?
Yeah, well, we're not all as clever as you would be able to switch off audio and stuff. I was panicking.
I thought the funniest bit though was when you asked her, would you like some cake, and she said, no, I won't, but no. You carry on, fat boy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. This is your...
It's still going.
This is your remit, Mullins.
Oh no, what are you doing now? I think you're stealing.
I was getting out the knife.
You're stealing the silver now.
Yeah. I remember that cake though. It was very, very nice.
Was it? What flavour was it?
Once I got into it, it was like a very traditional, like English currant cake.
And Robin didn't have any at all, no?
No.
None at all.
She did have some soup with me though.
She had soup and you had cake.
The FujiCast.
Well, there's a thing. This week, first of all, thank you to our friends at Simpler Straps for letting us give away a military grade. I love this, military grade. This stuff's tough.
Yeah.
Rugged camera strap to each of our favourite email questions of the week. We have one each, and they'll come up as the show goes on today. Remember too that all competition answers and winners are on the website only FujiCast, www.fujicast.co.uk, which is where you'll also find our Facebook friends page, which we'll talk about soon. So if you want to find out if you've been a winner, we've had two competitions in particular. There was the one to win the album, wasn't there?
QT albums, yep.
Which was brilliant, so thank you to QT for that. And then there was also the chance to come and be with us, take part in the recording of the podcast.
Correct.
And then
we'd
take you to Costa.
Yeah. So you will, if you are lucky enough to have won any of those, we will email you directly as well. If you haven't received an email and you want to be envious of the people who have won it, go onto the website and have a look at that list.
We're going to do that again. I had a couple of ideas. I know you should never discuss ideas before we've talked, and I'm kind of doing it in a public arena now, but I had another couple of ideas for meetups and stuff. I thought we should really do a Christmas party where we go to your local pub in Malmesbury and I'll take all the outside broadcast stuff, and we'll get blathered and talk about Fujifilm cameras all at the same time.
Well, I think that's an amazing idea. However, the locals in my pub,
they not appreciate it,
especially people like Shep and people like One-Eyed Bob, and
you're making these people
and
up.
Naughty Norman might have their eyes opened a little bit.
Really?
Some of these people probably have never left Wiltshire.
No.
Yeah.
How many eyes does One-Eyed Bob have?
One.
Oh.
Yeah, funny enough.
You surprised me.
And his actual real name is William.
So do you not like that idea then?
I do, actually. I think it's a great idea.
So I had that, and I had a summer barbecue idea, but the problem with the summer barbecue idea is you're always away for the entire summer.
Yeah.
So unless we come to Spain, then...
you're more than welcome.
Well, there we go. A Spanish broadcast. Oh, that would be good. Yeah.
Quisiera dos cervezas, por favor.
That's the only thing you know how to say. We have our self-indulgent minute where we thank you for the wonderful reviews you've been making at Apple Podcasts. Our guest today is Sean Tucker, rising YouTube... Well, you can't really say rising YouTube photography star, really, can you? Because when you've got 250,000, you've officially arrived, haven't you?
Yeah. He absolutely. Rising is not the right word to use.
Right.
YouTube star.
Sensation. He plays right into our second half topic in terms of social media presence and having to deal with the not so good as well as the good. In the second half, we talk about the currency of likes and dealing with social media negativity. So there we go. That's what's on the show today. We've got. Before we start with the first question, which you can leap off with, I need to just say something. This is from Pano Man. Neil, for the love of podcasting, please stop playing the email sound effect. Even though it's not mine, and I know it's not, it puts me right on edge while I'm listening, as I think there are emails coming in. Loving the show, just not the sound effect of the email.
Very good point.
Get one of the kids to read the email addresses out or something. Well, that's not a bad idea at all. So, no longer this. The last time, here we go, ready? That's it.
I just got an email.
Is that your phone?
Oh, that'll work. Yeah, that'll work.
Everybody's looking down. Oh, I know I don't have vibration on. Anyway, you go with the first email. No email effect.
Okay, so this is from Adam Gerhold, and he says, my name is Adam, and I am from New Hampshire, USA. I recently switched from Nikon to the Fujifilm X series, or X100F.
Oh, I like the way you go into the American version. Nikon, not Nikon.
And I love it.
We're the only people in the world that call it Nikon.
Yeah, we're the only ones that say Nike as well. Oh, no, Nike rather than Nike.
Nike. Sorry, I interrupted your flow.
Yeah. I shoot primarily live concerts, but have shot a few friends' weddings and would like to shoot more. My question to you is, how do you go about branding, pitching yourself as a documentary-style wedding photographer? Ooh. Especially when you don't have a portfolio, etc., etc. Thanks very much. Really enjoy the podcast as well as the work from both yourself and Neil. Keep it up. A really good question, because I think Neil, yourself, and I definitely get lots of, well, I wouldn't say lots, but probably once a month I get an inquiry from the USA. And the inquiry is usually the same. We're really struggling to find a documentary-style wedding photographer in our area of the United States. And, are you interested? And of course, I can't do it. I won't do it because the visas and all of that kind of stuff. Your mileage may vary on your wanderings into America to shoot weddings. However, the fact is there are people out there that want documentary wedding photographers in America, but the style and the cultural differences perhaps are different there, and it's definitely not something that is as prevalent as in Europe, I would say. Yeah. And so, that the point I'm making, I guess, is that because there's less people looking for that style, that means you've got less fish in that barrel to shoot at, but those fish are bigger fish. And the only way that really I think that you can try and approach this is to be totally honest with your website, your content, your social media. If you really want to be a documentary style wedding photographer, there is no, regardless of what part of the world you're in, there is no point having, catering for the masses and having wedding dresses hanging on trees or close-ups of the wedding rings or beautiful portraits.
Yeah, I was going to say it straight away. Be very targeted.
Yeah.
Because as soon as and I get this from people that contact me that say, we chose to come and see you and a couple of others because the first thing we saw on your website was a picture of somebody crying. And it wasn't a picture of a pair of shoes or rings stuck in a cake in artistic fashion. Yeah,
exactly. And, it will be more difficult in places where it's not the norm, but it wasn't the norm in the UK not so long ago. It's become more prevalent, and I suspect that will happen in America also. The USA is huge. There's a lot of people there. There's a lot of people who want different styles of wedding photography. But what you mustn't do, I feel, is just take the easy route and, take on the more traditional style weddings because you think that's the only way in. Because then you'll end up just shooting those. You'll get depressed by shooting those if that's the style that you don't want to shoot. And you'll come away not liking the weddings. You won't put enough effort into it. And then you'll just wander off and drift away and do something else.
So be targeted.
Be absolutely very targeted. Be honest. Stick pictures of people crying on your website. But yeah, absolutely. The branding, the website is all about attracting people as much as it is about pushing people away. So what you don't want is people coming to your website and saying, yeah, we really like those pictures of people crying on your website. However, we want, we're getting married in a lovely Malibu beach house and we want 65 group shots on the beach. And then you just go, yeah, okay, we'll do that.
Was part of that question though also to deal with how do you get to that situation? How do you get to shoot it? Or have
No, not really. It was more about the branding.
My wife's always telling me I don't listen. So this is just another opportunity, really.
What did you say?
All right, very funny. Oh, also, by the way, you can look on your own doorstep for documentary work. I don't do lots and lots, but I do some Turkish weddings from time to time. And in London, there aren't many documentary. There's lots of documentary wedding photographers. That's nonsense. But there aren't many that deal with Turkish weddings.
Right.
There's no reason why they couldn't. Every documentary wedding photographer could deal with a Turkish wedding.
Love to do
it's just that I happened across a Turkish wedding because I'd shot a wedding of a friend, and I found myself in that community. And now I haven't become the go-to by any means, but I've certainly figure more when there's one certain venue called the Kervan that does an awful lot of Turkish weddings.
Right, I'm writing that down now. Email them.
No, they don't push me forward. Kervan. Yeah. But I do remember doing Turkish weddings are huge. Yeah. I mean, just the sheer numbers of people. 1,400 people. Yeah. I remember saying to a bride at one of these weddings, I said, "Do you know everyone in here?" She said, oh, I've no idea. I wouldn't even think my father knows half of these people. I'm not sure where they all came from, but they certainly turned up with money, and they do the pinning the money on there,
as the Greeks do. In fact, I had an inquiry a couple of weeks ago for a wedding in Istanbul.
Oh.
Not Constantinople,
no.
Istanbul.
Cue the song.
Yep, and sadly I couldn't do it, but Istanbul. That would have been Turkish wedding. Is that in Turkey?
That definitely would have been a Turkish wedding, yeah. There's no doubt in my mind that would have been a Turkish wedding.
Geographic inabilities.
Hello, Kevin and Neil. I just shot a wedding this past weekend. A lot of wedding questions. This weekend, and was curious how you guys decide when you're post-processing. This doesn't have to be just for weddings, actually. Which photographs are colour and which will be black and white? Do you have a formula you go by, or a rule of thumb? Well, I think we talked about the idea of working in islands of colour, didn't we, a couple of weeks ago, maybe last week, and that's how I make my decisions. I don't like to dance around too much as the portfolio or the collection as it expands out. If you're going with colour, black and white, colour, black and white, colour, black and white, black and white.
Islands of colour.
Islands of colour or islands of black and white.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same way, obviously.
Yeah.
And that's the way I do it, because often I'm using these images then in a photo film where images will sit alongside each other, and if they're darting between colour and black and white, it's just a dog's dinner of design as well, particularly in albums. I'm a real I'm not obsessively compulsive about this, but when I design an album, I don't like there to be a colour picture amongst a load of black and white. Yeah. Or vice versa. I think that looks like a dog's dinner of design. I think maybe you can make those decisions partly in that way. I tend to choose when the moments are more emotional, I go for black and white. If it's something that's important for clothing, it'll be colour.
Yeah, similar. I mean, I always say to my clients that, unless they purchase the black and white only coverage, I always say to them that, if I'm photographing it because of the colour, then it will be in colour. But typically when I'm doing an edit these days, if there hasn't been any kind of conversation like that and there's no obvious, theme running through, I will, if I've been shooting raw at least, I will be thinking, summer weddings especially, all of the outside stuff will be in colour, anything inside will be in black and white, so you tend to have like bridal prep black and white, outside of the church colour, inside the church black and white, reception colour, etc.
Dancing?
Dancing, we would normally be in colour though when you get to that point. Winter weddings, more black and white coverage. There's certainly a lot less colour there. But yeah, it's definitely the worst thing you can possibly do. I agree with you, Neil, is to just randomly go through and think, oh, that one looks better in black and white, that one looks better in colour. Yeah. Do it in islands of colour or islands of monochrome. Think about it that way, and you'll be better. Here's a neat little tip also, by the way, nothing to do with black and white and colour, but on editing and workflow. I've started editing my weddings backwards, so I start at the end.
Why?
Well, strap yourself in, this is quite a long one.
Stand by.
Warning.
Imagine, if you will, you have a written sentence,
yes.
Okay, and the word "the" is repeated twice. Okay, in that sentence. Now, if you read it forwards, your brain will automatically skip over the second "the." You read it completely naturally. Your brain can put the context together. If you read the exact same sentence backwards, your brain stops at the word "the," the second "the." Yeah, but because it can't, there's no context. Because the sentence doesn't make sense in our brain. We're just reading a sequence of words.
Oh, I see what you mean by backwards.
Rather than a story.
I was being daft.
And I find when I'm editing weddings also, it helps me, because if I'm going backwards, I don't really have the insight and the knowledge in my brain, because my brain is tiny, of what's coming next, because it's in reverse order, right? And so I find that I can concisely edit. I can actually edit quicker because I'm not thinking about the next picture already. I'm just doing it on a one-on-one image basis. And it makes a difference. You should try it. It's the same chess players, like Grand Slam chess players, if they are analysing a new game, let's just say there's been a new World Championship game, and normally with chess games, they get to, say, 15, 16 moves into the game, and that has been played many, many times before. And then when the game becomes unique, which is pretty hard, but when it does become unique, when those grandmasters start analysing those chess games, they'll often analyse it backwards. So they'll start with the checkmate and start analysing the moves backwards, because their brain has to think harder, and it's not a natural progression that way. It's really interesting.
Oh, I never thought of it like that.
It's called psychology.
Thank you very much for the lesson.
The psychology of editing backwards.
Much appreciated. Right, have you got some... let's go for the reviews. We should do our self-indulgent minute. I'll start. Fantastic podcast, not just for Fuji fans. As a Fuji shooter, I've been a huge fan of Kevin's for years. So while the podcast is great for those Fuji tips and chat, it's also a great resource for general photography too, at iMarkyP. Thank you, guys.
Okay, I've got one from Bert Palmer, who we featured last week, I think.
Oh, Bert.
Good old Bert. Very nice guy. I don't even shoot Fuji, but this has quickly turned into one of my favourite photography podcasts.
Can't re-edit that because the bed's running.
I'm still in Turkey. Great content, great production, and plenty of humour. It's really enjoyable. Listen, even after 10 years shooting weddings, I learn something new from these guys each week. Thank you, Bert.
At Alison E26, just listen to the last 3 back to back. That is called binging, which I think it proves it's an enjoyable show. Easy listening, and informative. Look forward to hearing more.
We're a box set. Yeah. S. Pickard says, thank you, Neil and Kevin, for another great podcast. The segment on James Revilius and listening to Robin Revilius made my day. At the end of the podcast, I scuttled over to Breathe Pictures Photography podcast to listen to the full interview. Tumas Michelonian's question was thought-provoking. As an amateur photographer, I am my worst critic and never happy with my work. Looking forward to the next podcast.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your reviews. And yeah, that's a bit like the Peter McKinnon 2-minute thing, isn't it?
I think S. Pickard is the same one that sent the email. Remember when we said we had an email about Robin Revilius interview? Yeah. I think that's the same person. I think possibly.
Oh.
May not be though.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
Questions. Shall I go, or you're going to go?
You go.
This is from Soriante Orange. Soriante Orange? Is that the way I say it? Soriante Orange. Hi, thank you for the work. The info in the video is very... Oh, no, this was something that came out of a YouTube, but I copy-pasted it. Thank you to you and the rest of my research. I decided to go for an XT3. I always feel a little bit concerned when I make a movie. And
it's your fault.
And then it's my fault. But I've not got any idea about... the system. Oh dear. So I need it for food and street photography, but also for video and dynamic portrait work like interviews. Could you tell me the must-have lenses which I need to have in the kit bag? Let's say maybe the best 4.
You choose.
Okay, so, well, for food, see, I don't really do food photography, so I guess for food you'd need a macro or something, would you?
Yes, possibly. So you have the 60mm macro f2.4, which is the slowest lens on the planet, but actually I think it's still the sharpest lens.
It is a slow lens. You can bring up children and send them off to university at the time. I guess I would go for, now I'm going to choose the ones that I have in my kit bag that I use the most, which would be the 16mm, the 23, the 56, and you did mention filming, so for me 10 to 24, that zoom is a perfect lens for when you're doing run and gun shooting for video. They would be my 4.
Yeah. The other option obviously is the 80mm macro, which is the newer macro, faster, probably much quicker to focus.
Right.
I don't have the 80mm, I have the 60mm still. Yeah, I agree.
What's the equivalent of the 135 in old
90, money? 90mm.
90
f2.8.
I keep thinking, that used to be... when I was a Canon shooter, the 135, I must have had 3 of those lenses.
Yeah, I did too.
I bought one, sold one. Bought a second one from funnily enough, from a friend, Stephen Carter Hewson. Sold me his 135, used it, sold it, and then I bought. And then I thought, I'm going to have a third go at this. A couple of years ago, bought one, sold it. But it is sometimes when, particularly in weddings, if you're at the back of a church, it just gives you that little bit of extra throw.
Yeah, they're 90mm. I don't have that either, and I did have it for a while. I loaned it for a while. I didn't really have much use for it, but yeah, for portraits and everything, it's. I mean, the work that I've seen with people shoot that 90mm, and even people like Jeff Carter have used it on the racetracks, and it's like phenomenal. The bokeh. Is it quick? Amazing. It's very quick. Yeah, very quick.
It needs to be if he's using it on the track.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've used the 50-140 on the track, and that's quite good. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Anyway, yours.
Okay, right, I have one from our friend Stephen Vaughan. He's getting in every week.
I think he's going for a record and how many times he could be mentioned.
Loving the podcast and spreading the words for you guys. Thank you. I note Kevin's comments on DNG files last week. On a related topic, I have found that using Irritable X Transformer as a demosaic pre-treatment for RAW files can give slightly cleaner raw files to take into Lightroom, especially with the XT3, as the high ISO images, 6400 and above, look a little noisier than our XH1 and X100F.
God, has he been eating a textbook or something?
It seems to make the noise more film-like. It does, however, add another step, and it converts the RAW files to DNG as part of the processing. Have you used Irridant, and any comments? So first of all, I call it Irridant. Iridiant, I think, is the correct pronunciation. Iridiant. And the answer is no, I've never used it. Basically, I did use it once, and I honestly couldn't see any difference. Right. However, I do know people that do use it, and they swear by it religiously, so it must have some merit. I also know that Lightroom recently added this new feature where you can, clean up Fujifilm RAW files if they're highly sharpened and various bits and pieces. But honestly, the last thing I could think about is adding another step into my workflow and doing all that stuff.
Yeah.
I think perhaps for landscape and fine art and where you're editing individual images or small set of images, but when you're editing 400 or 500 images for a wedding, it's not something I'm likely to do. However, like I say, I know that there are. I know that the guy that makes Irridiant developer is a independent developer, and he's doing good things for the community. So people have been using it, and they do get good results from it. Obviously, Stephen has. So yeah, but the answer is no.
The lifeblood of the show are your questions, and the only way you can get through to us with them, although to be fair, I did read a YouTube one, is click at fujicast.co.uk. That's click at fujicast.co.uk. Questions on anything. I think you've worked out by now we're not just Fujifilm. We can talk about digital marketing. We can talk about genres. In fact, next week we're going to be talking about a focal length more than actually the equipment itself. So click at fujicast.co.uk for your questions. Right, guest, before we come back. This week, I had a chance to go and see a YouTuber who I follow.
Sensation.
His work is phenomenal, isn't it? Sean Tucker. I remember watching Sean Tucker's channel, and I think he probably only had 5,000 to 10,000 subscribers or something. Well, you describe what I mean. I know why I particularly like his style on YouTube.
Oh, I love him because he's honest. He's normal. He's just a bloke chatting about photography and his thoughts, and he absolutely has full integrity, says it as it is. It's no pretentious. There's no fancy swirls and swishes and beats and bongs and bangs and stuff. Yeah. And you
B-roll.
I don't think we'll ever see Sean Tucker on a monoboard going in slow motion and stuff like that. Not that there's anything wrong with that kind of stuff, but yeah, I love it. And like you, I've been following his stuff from the early days. And he's I've never met him, of course, but you have, and nice, certainly a nice guy. He was one of the speakers at Matt Hart's Hip Festival.
Yes, he was
last year.
Yeah.
And I know that people I've spoke to from there, people like Lee Glasgow and stuff, said and they're really good friends with him. So he's obviously a very approachable, happy person as well, which is nice.
Well, I caught up with him in Wandsworth, which is where he's now based. And this week we're talking about social media, and that's the topic at the end of the show, and how to deal with the rough as well as the smooth. So this seemed an appropriate interview this week to include on the FujiCast. Sean's channel has swiftly climbed the consciousness charts, is now followed by nearly 250,000 subscribers. Not really a complete standing start, but much of the attention, I guess, has really come over the last 24 months or so. Sean breaks all the YouTube success tick box rules. He doesn't upload daily, not even weekly. Some months it really is just one film. He doesn't shout at you, and as Kev said, he's not filming from a one-wheel or hoverboard. His films aren't kit reviews, they're shared beliefs, shared feelings, sometimes tech, but more often philosophical thoughts about what it means to be a photographer, the struggles we face and how we can better ourselves. And though he trained in a seminary and almost became a preacher, his films certainly are anything but. He's gentle, thought-provoking, but above all, believable, honest and generous. Now, there's a much, much longer version of my chat with Sean on my Breathe Pictures podcast, where you'll hear all about his move from seminary to photography and then becoming a full-time photography YouTuber. So if you watch YouTube, if you like YouTube, if you're interested, if you have your own channel, if you follow Sean, then it's a super insight into his work. But in this short excerpt, I began by asking him if it's the absolute laid-bare honesty that really has projected him on the YouTube platform.
I don't know. I think so. Looking at the comments you get and the community that builds around it, it's definitely what people talk about the most on my channel. And it was a decision early on, because when I started in photography, I went to YouTube like everybody else does to learn skills and teach yourself, which is great. You can do that today. It's amazing. And I was often really disheartened by watching YouTubers who, you know, most of their video ended up being a marketing tactic of look how great I am, look how much success I have and all the clients that want to work with me. And then a month later, you'd see they disappeared because they went bankrupt. I'm like, oh, you were lying. You were just saying stuff because the whole point of you making videos was to show off about how great you are. And how discouraging that was to me, trying to teach myself, going, well, if this guy's doing this and he's got so many clients, what's wrong with me? Why can't I make this work? And I made a choice that I would never make videos like that I would be as honest about where it's not working and failing, and how little work I actually get in as a photographer, and how it's a constant struggle. Even if I have a YouTube channel that's working, it's still a struggle and still difficult to make things work. And the one guy who stands out, I think, was Zach Arias, who the tone of his videos felt a bit different to me, and he was someone I latched onto earlier. And there was a video he did for Scott Kelby's channel, I think, called Transform.
This the one where he said, "I'm moving 1,000 miles down." I can't remember it's such a beautiful quote, but I can't remember it.
Yeah, and it's sort of very ambient, lots of sort of B-roll and voiceover, and it was very, very honest about how it wasn't working for him. And I thought that video made an impression on me, and I always wanted to be at least that honest and say where it wasn't working, because I think if I'm genuinely not just trying to show off about the fact that I think I'm a good photographer and I'm trying to help people, because I think that's what a lot of people do on YouTube, is they've got this veil of I want to educate people, but it's mostly about promoting themselves, and I didn't want to fall into that trap. So I'm very deliberate about being honest about where things are difficult, or where my work didn't meet my own standards or other people's standards, or where, you know, money was tight, or because then it encourages people to know that the difficulties in their journey are everyone's. There's safety in numbers. We can just keep going together, and then I think I am more likely to help.
The danger, of course, is that people can contrive that scenario as well. I've seen films, I've watched films where people talk of their struggles, and I've thought, are you really struggling, or is this a struggle just to get figures?
I mean, that's an integrity issue, isn't it? That's you have to call yourself on that. If you've now using vulnerability as a gimmick, then you're gonna. Like you've seen through it. I think it is easy to see through, and people can usually pick up the difference. But yeah, it's definitely. It's what I did in the church. It's what I do on YouTube. It's what I hopefully will always do. I don't like building deeper friendships or relationships with people where I can't really trust what you're saying, or I feel like you're trying to impress me the whole time. We're not going to go very far. The people I build around me are people like that. It's what I relate to. So it's what I'm very hard on myself about putting out to the rest of the world as well.
Was there one? It was only one video. It's difficult because I feel I know your back catalogue really quite intimately. Was there one where you think that's the one? It probably is the Snowdonia one right at the start, isn't it?
It's the one that felt like the direction going forward for me. I'd done a few tutorials, some more dry product tutorials, which is still on my channel, which did all right, but I didn't connect with them, and I think other people connected with them because it gave good info, not because there was anything more to it. But the Snowdonia one, again, I was being very vulnerable and saying that I was shooting in studios all week, very technical product photography, which wasn't very creative. So I'm going to put myself out there, go and shoot landscapes, which I don't do. It's not something I'm very good at. Just to try and refresh photography as a pursuit and discovery, and by putting myself in a position where I didn't know what I was doing, and people related to that because of the vulnerability in that, and that felt like what I used to do with church. So it's like, that's the way forward. Yeah, and that video did well, and I think it got passed around a lot, and that's where it ticked up for me a little bit on the channel. Yeah, and I saw the potential of something going forward. Yeah.
And I mean, you hear this all the time. The photographer's game is kind of getting up when you think the light's going to be good, which is obviously before sunrise and right up to sunset. Try and find a spot and wait it out and hope the magic happens. Unfortunately, I mean, this is what I've chosen. I came up here last night and had a look, and it's got this beautiful view over this dam here. And I'm all set up ready to go, and it's very cloudy. So it's all right, there are breaks in the cloud like up there, so I'm thinking maybe if I get lucky and just get a clear spot, maybe we'll get some light coming through. But then again, what they don't tell you is you could sit here and, you know, you've woken up at 5 in the morning and hiked all the way up this mountain, and nothing's going to happen. It's just going to be cloudy. But that's why I suppose that's what the game is. So I'm going to hang out here for about...
I mean, on my channel, the videos that do well are not the ones that I like. They're the info ones. It's like if I think the most viewed one on my channel is about, you know, developing a color look to your images and how you dial that in custom. You don't rely on presets. I don't really care about that video. I care about something where I'm sitting and telling a bit of a story. They don't do as well. Like I just did one in January this year with my grandfather, who was showing through images he took in 1945, 46, 47 when he was in the Navy, including, you know, the ruins of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and down to Australia and Singapore, Hong Kong, and amazing stories. Like I'm really happy I captured that and think it's a good watch.
This one, I hope you can see it. He is a Japanese prisoner of war. We had him on board ship, Japanese prisoners of war on board as a working party. And as they were leaving the ship, I stood at the bottom of the gangway with my brownie box camera, ready to take photographs of some of them as they came off. And he's running at me to try and knock the camera out of my hand.
Oh gosh.
But it's never going to get the traction of me telling you how to do color theory. But I'm not out to build a techie channel. I want it to be the story-driven stuff. So I'll give the technical stuff every now and again because I don't mind, and it's stuff I know. But I want to focus on the other stuff.
Your videos have a very gentle pace. They start with a philosophical quote, or maybe a couple of quotes. Not just from photographic masters, though. Where did the idea for that come from? It's a wonderful way to start a film. I mean, I feel extremely, is the word appropriate, comfortable the moment I start watching a Sean Tucker film.
That's lovely. Documentaries, really. I think I love a documentary. I mean, I would rather watch a documentary than a feature film, like a fiction. And a lot of documentaries start with some kind of quote to set the theme, and I think that stuck somewhere. And I think the first time I did it was that Snowdonia video, something I'd read that week. Because when I script a video or write down the ideas for it, I will throw in quotes that have sparked thinking around it that I don't necessarily include, but it just helps me think around a theme. And at that point, when I was writing the script for that, I'm like, well, why not? You've got these quotes in there. They really sort of match what you're doing. Throw them up front in text and let it lead in with some. I think at that one I had shots of the river going past and just ambient sound of the water going past, and it was a nice way to kind of slowly lead into it, I think. And
you've championed quality over quantity. There's no doubt about that. The reason for that is that purely because these take so long to produce.
A little bit. It's not the length of filming or editing, even though that takes a long time. It's more, I feel like the kind of stuff I want to do should feel rich in content, and that takes time to live first and to think through and then to write, and that takes the most time, not the filming and the editing. I can get that done in a few days. it's something, I mean, I have a list on my phone of topics. I've probably got 80, 90 topics ready to go, which if I'm only doing, 12 to 20 videos a year, that's the next 4 years. But a lot of them aren't ready. They're ideas that I know I still need to do thinking around. And when I'm ready to do a video, I'll sort of thumb down that list and realize I've done enough living to write that script now. And then I can sit down and I can write out that script for a week or work on the idea, and that's what takes time. And I watch too many YouTubers that I really like. Over time, I feel have started to dilute their content because they've given themselves a hectic schedule of 2 videos a week or something. I mean, I would not be able to do that and not dilute my content. There's no ways I could keep up with that schedule. I don't have something interesting to say every week. And I made a commitment early on. I only wanted to make stuff that I would want to watch, and I could only do that realistically. I mean, I only promise 1 video a month on my channel in the trailer. I often do, at the moment I'm doing 2, sometimes I did 3 last month, but I don't tell people that. I'm only promising 1 a month, and when they're ready, they're ready. Quality is more important. I never want to get to the stage where I'm diluting or stretching content thin because I'm trying to fill a schedule.
If you want to hear that interview in its full length, then head to the Breathe Pictures podcast, which has over an hour of his chat with me, where he shares more about being a YouTuber, the hows and the whys of it. Plus, we touch on street photography and his own backstory. Thank you to Sean for sharing his thoughts. Kev.
Okay, so back to the questions, and my question of the week, which means that this person is going to get a simpler strap.
I still haven't done a fanfare. Sorry, I will get on that. I promise.
So this one is from hello from Greece, dear Neil and Kevin. Mm-hmm. This is from George Fakinos.
Fakinos. I've been to Fakinos, I think. Sorry. I have Fakinos Taverna. Sorry, we promised we would.
I think there's a place close to Merthyr Tydfil called that as well. Okay, right.
Sorry, that was extremely rude. I apologise.
Terrible. Well, let's just call him George.
George.
Congratulations on the podcast. I have a very easy question for you. Imagine you want to photograph the wedding of a friend as a wedding gift.
Oh, God.
Your friend has already hired a pro wedding photographer, so you are just going to have some fun and create your kind of photos.
Yeah.
No strings attached. What tips would you give yourself? What would be your strategy and your way of thinking, considering this is not a job, just a nice gift for your friend?
Always scares me, though, that.
P.S. Only 1 camera and 1 lens, which is a Canon EOS M5 and 32mm 1.4 lens. Well, first of all, I think that the EOS M5 is a full frame camera, I think. Is it? Possibly 32mm seems like an old focal length for full frame.
For George as you speak.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, it's going to be somewhere in the middle, which is a good focal length.
So EOS
M5.
M5.
Yeah. It's a good focal length. 32mm, whether it's full frame or not, it's going to be somewhere between 26 full frame and perhaps 41 if it's a APS.
Of course, it's the mirrorless, isn't it?
Yeah. Doesn't say, does it? It must say somewhere. Anyway, well, I'm sure somebody will let us know. Either way, well, what I would do, firstly, is under no circumstance put any pressure on yourself, because you're there as a guest and you're there to enjoy it also. But this is basically the way that I started. I started going to friends' weddings. In those days, most of my friends were having their first wedding, and many of them have gone on to have more than one wedding. Yeah. And I would go just as a guest and take what was in those days a Canon 350D or 300D or something like that. I think they call it a Rebel or something in America. Yeah. And can't remember the lens I used to choose, but yeah, I used to go and just essentially take snaps, candid snaps. And I would, it depends. The question is a little bit kind of disjointed in that there is a pro photographer there and you're doing it as it is a gift. So that presumably you want to give them something other than just kind of snapshots of the people that are in front of you. But the most important thing by far, regardless of style or orientation of camera gear or anything, is that you do not get in the way of the professional photographer. He's there, he's been hired to do his job, or she has been hired to do her job, and that is paramount, absolutely paramount. Yeah. What I would probably try and do is do essentially essentially the opposite of what the professional photographer is doing. So if it's a very formal wedding and the professional photographer is doing his job or her job, then I would be doing the candid shots around that. Perhaps if he's photographing bride and groom coming down the aisle, I might be photographing people in the congregation, looking at them coming down the aisle. The stuff that the professional photographer is not going to be seeing, not going to be shooting, regardless of his style. That's probably what I would be doing. But number one, don't get in the way of the pro. Number two, relax, enjoy it. Don't put pressure on yourself.
It's a very difficult thing photographing friends' weddings.
Yeah, it is. Although I do enjoy it myself, I must admit.
I've got one coming up for a very good friend, and I'm shooting his wedding in October.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a part-time photographer. But his eye is great, and for me, it's a good challenge because I think it focuses you.
One-eyed Bob's used to have a good eye.
We're back to one-eyed Bob. He's got a good focusing eye, one-eyed Bob. Yeah, so, good luck, George, with that.
Yep.
And have fun
That's
as well.
the question of the week,
Enjoy
remember.
it.
So,
Question of the
George,
week.
I will be emailing you, and you will be getting your simpler strap.
Can I play my my question of the week as well? This one was a long email, but the end of it was, I thought, the apposite part. Tommy Wessel from Vail in Colorado. I've decided that X-T3 is a great video camera, even without the IBIS. It's probably better than the full-frame Nikon D750 in many ways. I'm assuming he's done his research on that. They're his thoughts, not mine. But are people dismissive of any APS-C camera to the point where it could jeopardize my professional progress? You're both successful in your own right using Fuji systems, but for someone newer trying to break through, is all this hype about full frame something to consider seriously? God, this is a big subject all of its own. Or should I not worry about it and go make the best content I can with the APS-C sensor? Because I know I can. I know after hours of research that the X-T3 can handle it. Part of that question, I think, is perhaps aimed at people that look at what you're using as a camera and think, so you've just walked into my my professional environment here with that, have you? I was expecting something much larger. Do you think part of that is that?
Yeah, and you know what, with no disrespect to the question, but the only people that I've ever had this question from are other photographers.
Right.
Not once has a client ever said anything to me. Not once. Right. Not in the 400 odd weddings I've shot with Fujifilm cameras, not once in any of the commercial shoots I've done.
But it's interesting that people do when you're using, say, for the X Pro 2 was the only camera I ever used in terms of people asking questions about it. I've had nobody ask any questions about an X-T3.
No.
But an X Pro 2, people did used to say, "Oh, what's that? Oh, that's quite small. Is that film?"
Yeah, but they were interested in it because they were they were curious about it rather than seeing it as a negative. Why aren't you using a bigger camera kind of thing?
Yeah.
Honestly, I put it out of your mind. It's
really,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, why? That's like, it's like saying, can a taxi driver be seen as as a reasonable taxi driver just because he's using a smaller car than the bloke next to him? It's nothing. It's a nothing thing. Do not worry about it at all, ever.
The taxi one is, would you get in the Mercedes or the Prius? Doesn't matter as long as they go to the same place.
Yeah, whichever one's cheapest, which would be the X-T3.
That's true. I can actually, on that one, Tommy, recall from my recent journey to the Gambia to do some filming. I was working with a producer that is used to Arri Alexas. That's a big unit. And he's used to working on set with that. Not once did he question the fact that I'd put an X-T3 into a fig rig and I was using that instead. Didn't matter to him at all.
Oh, and also we found out why they're called fig rig.
Oh yeah, somebody sent in something.
Somebody did send something in.
I'll
Get
find
it?
That.
Named after George Figgis, is it?
Was it?
Yeah. So I think you're pronouncing it wrong. I think it's a Figgis rig.
Figgis. I can't find it. I'd even printed it off.
We did have it.
I did have it.
I'm fairly sure that it's named after a film producer or something called George Figgis.
Are you?
So, well, that's what the email said.
Right, okay.
I'm only going by what the email said.
Well, yeah.
And he definitely said Figgis, not figs.
There was definitely an email about it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your email on that. Right.
Okay.
If you'd like to send in your questions, then it is click at fujicast.co.uk. Click at fujicast.co.uk. Questions about anything, really. It can be the kit, it can be the genre, anything you like. Anything, well, almost anything goes. This week we decided to talk about the currency of likes, and also the idea, well, how to deal with negative, sometimes negative comments, of which social media, of course, can be full of. Kev, you've had your, more so than me, you've had your real fill of this.
Oh yeah, I've had it all the way through my career, basically. Let me caveat that by saying 99% of the interactions I have in the industry are positive. Yeah. But it's just that little 1% that you tend to remember the most. And I remember way back when I first started shooting weddings, and of course I went straight into shooting as a documentary style photographer. And I had anonymous emails, of course, from people who, probably the same person, in fairness, it came once every 3 months or so, saying things like, you are bringing the whole industry down, your brides will always regret having a photographer like you, none of the people in your pictures are looking at the camera, etc., etc. And, these may well be valid points, but the fact is they were...
I don't think they're valid at all.
Well, I don't think they're valid either, right. But the thing is, everybody has a right to an opinion.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's anonymous and I could not reply to it or kind of communicate with it, I mean, that just told me that it was somebody who was probably a little bit, annoyed the way the industry might have been changing a little bit, and styles are changing. The best one I had was not long ago. I was at Photokina, and Fujifilm were releasing the 50R, the GFX 50R, and I'd done a review of it, and my YouTube review was under embargo until I think 1 p.m. on the day of announcement or something. And of course, I tell you what, that is the most stressful thing I've ever done in my life. Done a YouTube review and hit the schedule button, because knowing full well that if that goes live before the 1 p.m. embargo, that's a terrible, terrible thing. But trust in YouTube that schedule actually means schedule rather than it's just going to go live. That was hardcore. Anyway, the video went live, and got it was a good video, I think, and lots of fair points, mostly very positive comments, apart from one guy.
Oh.
And he said, how could anybody, why do Fujifilm give you cameras? They don't, by the way. How does anybody trust you? Have you seen your teeth? You've got the ugliest teeth.
Oh, is this the teeth guy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's right. I definitely don't have the best
ugly teeth.
I don't have the best ganaches in the world.
Kev.
But you know what? You get, I was literally in the, about 5 minutes before going on stage to give a presentation.
Oh, not the time you want to read that.
No, exactly. And, your nerves are kind of clutching around as it is. And then you see something as personal as that. It wasn't even, I don't like these pictures, or, this camera's not for me, which is fine. I can deal with all of that stuff. But personal attacks based entirely on jealousy, because they've got no other currency, just entirely on jealousy, is horrible. Like, really, really horrible.
So how do you deal with it then?
Well, I'm a bit more thick-skinned than I used to be, so I kind of chuckled a little bit.
Let's take it right back to the start, though, for when, because this is a chat about, sorry to cut across you, but this is a chat about how to deal with it. And you've got a reasonably large YouTube presence now. You've got, it's 20, what is it, 5,000, did you say? 25,000. So that's good. So that means you're going to get a lot of comments, and they're not always going to be good ones. But right at the start, when you had far less subscribers, where most photographers sit, how do you deal with negative stuff? Do you wait? Do you roll up your sleeves and think, right, or do you say, no? Do you know what? I'm going to deal with you with kindness.
Yeah, I think dealing with kindness is the best way, because otherwise you have to be yourself, put it that way. And if your initial reaction is to be aggressive and angry, then that doesn't necessarily make you any different to them, perhaps. I have a base policy on my content, my YouTube content, Instagram, all of that kind of stuff, that I will allow anybody to say absolutely anything as long as it's a valid argument, has a valid reasoning, but dealing with it from a psychological point of view is hard. It can be hard, but that's why I say, you have to remember that 99% of the stuff is good and positive, and everybody who is creating any content that goes public, whether you're a wedding photographer, a street photographer, an artist, a painter, a sculptor, whatever you are, it's subjective, and you will be open to criticism in inverted comments and creative criticism is fine, because we all have to learn, we all have to take feedback. But the stuff that's based totally on vitriol, totally on jealousy, they're the ones that, I just want to kind of grab them and kick them in the a little bit, because it's just
what's happened to this treat them kindly thing.
No, like I'm on about the creative criticism is fine.
Oh, everybody
Absolutely.
else gets kicked in
it's the personal attacks.
Right.
It's that stuff. I mean, that's I mean, I had one recently on YouTube where the guy, it was a YouTube video I did about street photography and wedding photography, the correlation between it. And I'm very, very keen that when I do my YouTube content, I always include lots of my pictures, okay? And I think that's really important. Now, I'm not stupid enough to realize that everybody's going to like all my pictures, okay? Not even I like all my pictures. And so, I caveated that video with, look, I'm not the best wedding photographer in the world. I'm certainly not the best street photographer in the world. But this video is about showing the correlation between the two and how I use that correlation. Yeah. And somebody came onto the video, and I left this comment on there because it's a valid opinion. However, the implementation of the opinion was pretty cruel, and it was something along the lines of, I was an MPA associate in 1982, and I can tell you now that your photographs are nothing more than snapshots.
Here we go.
And and that's fine. It's fine to be an MPA associate, and it's fine to assume that my photographs are nothing more than snapshots. But the conversation rolled on, and other people came to the thread and supported me mostly. Although some other people did say, "Yeah, I think they're snapshots too," and that's fine. So those comments stay. But the fact is, it was based on nothing. It was an anonymous comment. There was no link to any pictures, nothing. And it was a pointless conversation. I guess that's the thing I'm saying. If he'd said, "I really don't like your pictures because there is no artistic control. You're not using lights. Whatever," then we could have had an honest conversation about it. Rather than
usually these people don't want an honest conversation like that. They just want to come in, drop what they're ever going to drop in your room, and then disappear again.
Yeah, I mean, it's vitriol. It's often vitriol. Yeah. And the same thing happens on Facebook and Instagram to a certain extent. But it's it is hard to deal with sometimes. You do get that stuff, and me specifically, possibly a little bit more than you because of my Fujifilm relationship. I've got my head above the turret, so to speak, I have to expect to be shot at, and it's I don't let it bother me these days so much, but if you're a new photographer, you're just in the industry. One of the challenges I know that you will have is the worry about putting your work on your website and your blog posts and stuff. And I've spoken to photographers about this regularly. I'm scared about putting blog posts online because what will people think? What if they're not good enough? What if they're not good enough? That's what always comes up. And my answer to those people is, you only have to worry about your clients. Do not worry about what other photographers think. Do not worry about that.
Definitely on that point, if somebody does give you a negative thing, that's when you don't want to wade in with your sleeves rolled up, because I think your clients will respect you more if you have an Instagram channel, Facebook, comments, YouTube. If you do have a YouTube channel, they'll respect you more. And you'd be amazed that I've got clients that say, "Oh, I've checked out your YouTube channel." I'm thinking, thank heavens then that I've always been nice in response to comments, because I think it shows a terribly ugly side of you if you just want to get into a fist fight.
Well, I did a talk at the photography show last 2 weeks ago, whenever it was. Big talk on the wedding live stage, a lot of people there, and I finished, and I came off, and I was in a bit of a hurry because I wanted to get to the car to listen to the second half of of Wales winning the Grand Slam. Did we mention that? Anyway, this
only a couple of times.
This guy came up.
When are you going to change that Welsh flag thing that you've got on your Facebook?
When we lose the Grand Slam.
No, we're going to have that for another year at least.
This guy came up to me and he said, really, I loved your presentation. Really nice to meet you. And look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks. And I was like, a couple of weeks. And I was thinking, is he on a workshop? And he said, I'm Dan, you're photographing our wedding. And I was like, "Oh, hi, yeah." So he watched the whole presentation, and and he was there in the.
Never know
and his
who's
wife to be was there also.
She was there absolutely. As well. It was a good phrase to avoid criticism: say nothing, do nothing, be nothing. And I think saw that on a Sean Tucker film, funnily enough.
Don't worry what others think. That's the key thing. You know, of course, if you put yourself in an environment where it's you're doing that for whatever reason, like YouTube, etc. You know, if you're getting a majority of negativity, then there's something wrong. But you know, weigh it all up, and it's easy on YouTube because it's always the anonymous stuff.
I know what you were just saying about the head being above the parapet sometimes. I know that feeling only because of a couple of Fujifilm videos that I've made that have done well. I think this is currently 115,000 views, which, you know, for some YouTubers is small, is woeful. But for me, I always look at 115,000 as, that's more than Wembley. Whoa! So for me,
you shouldn't look at the views. By the way, look at the hours. Look how long.
The hours. I know.
I bet that's about over a year's worth of people watching.
Is it really?
I would imagine so.
God,
yeah.
I hope Wembley have got enough food. But I was reading in here, and he's the comments on this particular person was talking about wedding photographers. I love this bit. After a huge diatribe about not knowing about photography, he went into something about, I know you wedding photographers don't really have deadlines. No, 2 to 3 days is not a deadline, it's a vacation. But you've got to step your game up if you want to be considered a professional. And I know your average client has low standards, because just like any wedding photographer's client, boy, I thought, what? Just like any wedding photographer's clients, they have low... Anyway, he went on and on and on. But I responded with, I'm a little too long in the tooth to be baited like this. In a world where you can be anything, be kind. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really important when it comes to leaving. I never leave thumbs down on any videos. I've never left one single thumbs down on any video I've ever watched on YouTube, even if I don't appreciate what they're saying.
Me neither. The only channel I leave thumbs down on is yours.
Oh, thanks. That's where they all come from. How many accounts have you got? Anyway, that was our thought about negativity. I think just in closing, be kind in return. I think your clients will appreciate it more. They'll like it. You'll look bigger for it. And I think never worry about other people thinking, yeah, this person's right. Because I think most people will look at those negative comments and they'll think they're being a jackass as well.
Yeah, and the wedding industry is full of people who are not full. There's a lot of people in the wedding industry who think that they are right and everybody else is wrong.
This is wrong.
And of course, that just isn't true.
Well, thank you. That's it for another week. Thanks for your questions. Lifeblood of the show. We really can't shovel coal into the firebox unless you bring your questions to the party. So send them to click@fujicast.co.uk. click@fujicast.co.uk. Big love to our friends at Simpler Straps for the straps. We've got some packets there. Did you see them?
I did. Yeah.
Who's going to have the red one? JP said, I bet you won't choose the red one.
It's very nice, though. I tell you who would have that.
Who?
Patrick Lerock. He loves red straps.
Should we send it to him as a prezi?
We could do.
Do you think he's already got one, though?
Possibly.
Because I quite like the red one, actually. Now I'm looking at it.
I'll send it to him.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So thank you to our friends at Simpler Straps for giving us a strap to give away to our favourite email question of the week every single week. Next week is Easter break. We're not going to be here. What are you doing for Easter?
I'm eating my kids' chocolate eggs, mostly.
You're eating your kids' chocolate eggs?
Yeah. Don't you do that?
No way!
My mum gave us the chocolate eggs for the kids the other day, and I had to ask her where she bought them from so I can replace them in time for Christmas, in time for Easter.
Seriously?
Well, you make it sound like it's weird.
Yeah, it is a bit weird, isn't it? So we're going to be back on the 22nd, where our guest will be Tom Stoddart, and also our subjects all are going to be about getting in close, working with a 16mm or wider. Actually, you go not
23.
Yeah, you're 23.
16, 23, that range. Yeah.
Yeah. Payoff this week for Kev is going to be from Rosa.
My dad's Instagram is Kevin Mullins Photography. See his films on YouTube at Documentary Eye. His website is kevinmullinsphotography.co.uk. Or for street workshops, training and everything Fujifilm, go to f16.click.
My Jack turned 11 last week. We had a big party and he said, can I be the payoff for this week because it's my birthday? So yeah, all right.
My dad's Instagram is Neil James. See his films on YouTube at Neil James Photo. His website is neiljames.com for pictures and one-to-one mentoring. And you can hear his other photography podcast, which is called Breathe Pictures, wherever you get your podcasts.
And thank you in advance for the love you spread in the Apple Podcast reviews. We're trying to mention each and every one of you in our self-indulgent minute. We will see you. Have a nice Easter. Enjoy all your Easter eggs, Kev.
Happy Easter.
So enjoy your kids' Easter eggs.
Well, chocolate's not good for them, is it? So
obviously, it's not good for us either, really, if you think about it.